We got another waiver wire battle, and today we're looking at two rookie wide receivers who are hot off the press, hot off the waiver wire that everybody was picking up this week. We're going to be looking at Pearsall, and we're going to be looking at Jalen McMillan. Both these wide receivers are in grand situations to hit for us in fantasy football. When you look at their advanced stats and their situations, they're vastly similar, but yet vastly different. We want to look at their numbers, their situation, do a deep dive to see whether or not and which one we want for fantasy football. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments below. I'm kind of right down the center and I'm diversifying between the two. But as I talk through these players, I'm going to gather a sense which one I'm going to rather have, because that's usually how it works out for me. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're doing these deep dives every day. We're covering as many players as possible off the waiver wire every day, every week with these deep dives, so you can get the advanced analytics to look at so you can make your sound decision. On top of that, we're using these videos to help you set your lineups, and we're also doing player lists off the waiver wire multiple times a week so you can just get a quick run on some of those trending players. Click that button, stop missing out. Ric Flair's watching. You do not want to disappoint Ric Flair. But we're looking at Pearsall and Jalen McMillan. And these two wide receivers are very comparable. Both of them are very cerebral route runners with sticky hands. They're smart players. They're very crafty. They're quicker than fast. They can create separation off the break. Pearsall was drafted in the first round. Jalen McMillan went into the third round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen McMillan was going off in training camp. Baker Mayfield would not stop looking his way. All you heard was headline after headline after headline. Pearsall was dealing with some injuries. Then he got shot. He was missing some time. Had his first moment last week in week 7 when he first got to take snaps for the 49ers. Jalen McMillan broke his bread in week 1 this season, so he has been on the field. Seen a lot of snaps in the first 3 weeks of the season before he got injured. But there's a lot of interesting things about these players that are very similar once you dig into the data. And as you see, they have not been super productive yet. Of course, Pearsall hasn't, because he's only played 1 game. It was his first game on the field at the NFL level, seeing 5 targets, running a lot of routes, which is actually very good for your first ever NFL game. But week 1, 2, 3, you can say the same thing with Jalen McMillan, maybe a little bit lighter on the targets, but we were running a good bit of routes. We were seeing some snaps, missed some time due to injury, then we had to ramp it up to get back. We were back week 7, seeing a 60% snap share. That being said, McMillan is a player everybody's looking at off the waiver wire. Going back to college, looking at Pearsall, the reason why we go back to college is because we want to connect the dots of how these rookies play the game, and we already have a small sample at the NFL level, so why not make that sample bigger by going back to the prospect profiles that we talked about all offseason long. Another reason why you need to subscribe, because we do not stop here. We look at the rookies. We actually look at high school recruits too, all offseason long. But looking at what he did at Arizona State in 2021, 580 yards, 4 touchdowns. That is when he broke out, and Jaden Daniels was his quarterback. After that season, both of them transfer out. He goes to Florida, and we're playing with Anthony Richardson there, catching 33 balls for 661 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's not a lot of yards. However, he owns a large market share of the team's passing production. Same thing in 2023. We just improve upon those totals. We get 10% more ownership of the passing production, 965 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, doubled the balls caught. That's looking good. Almost double if you want to be exact. But we're looking at the ADI here. We got 11 in 2023, 17 in 2022. We can get those targets deep downfield. When you look at the yards per route run, last year 2.23, 2.41 in 2022. That's okay. That's average. That's good. That's not great. That's not like in Malik Neighbors territory. That's not pushing the 3s or even better. But it's good. We'll take that. That's good enough. Pearsall, I will not say he's a generational prospect. What you will see from a generational prospect is usually just 3 years in college, and those last 2 years, they go off. That second year, well over 1,000 yards receiving, double-digit touchdowns, and then that last year, it's just nasty. That's what you saw from Malik Neighbors, and what you're seeing here from a Ricky Pearsall is a good production profile that tells you he can break out with 2 different collegiate programs, but not at the point as a top-tier wide receiver coming out for the NFL draft. Jalen McMillan's story tells you about the same thing, but a little different. 1,000 yards receiving in 2022, 9 touchdowns caught. 2023, 45 balls caught, 559 yards. We've also been dealing with some injuries during this time throughout his collegiate career. But Jalen McMillan, throughout his collegiate career, the tape grinders would tell you, the draft aficionados would tell you, one of the best route runners in all of college football, creates separation downfield. In 2022, 13.1 average depth of target, 2.32 yards per route ran, 2.30 in 2023 for yards per route ran. It's good. It's good. It's not great. It's not top tier, but it's good. Everything's good here with both wide receivers. Similar breakout ages as well. Both of them broke out at age 20. What market share tells you is the ownership of the passing production. At what rate did you own those passing yards? Jalen McMillan, almost 23%. Ricky Pearsall, almost 23%. And the younger you do it, the better. And that's a prerequisite to the top wide receivers in the National Football League. Most of the top wide receivers break out early in college. Because if you're really talented, you just jump into the college game and you just rock with it. You start blowing guys away. Not all the early breakouts hit, but usually the guys that do hit are early breakouts. We have some outliers that did not break out in college or broke out late in college that hits at the NFL level, but that is very rare and the odds are set against them. Breaking out at age 20 is right in the middle. That's a good age. But then we're coming out for the NFL draft. We're looking at draft season here, and we're looking at Jalen McMillan. He's an under-the-radar wide receiver prospect the whole time, and we're wondering where he's going to get drafted the whole time because he could go anywhere. We had about 20 wide receivers in the 2024 NFL draft class who had day 2 grades or better. Both these wide receivers were in that group because we had a ton of them. And this is a very deep wide receiver class. Jalen McMillan going in the 3rd round. Honestly, anybody who studied the NFL draft, that shocked nobody. If you weren't paying attention to the NFL draft or the wide receivers, maybe it did. But he's got good production metrics. He's got good athleticism. He's a good wide receiver, a very good nuanced route runner in the 3rd round for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When I was talking about Ricky Pearsall, every other day when I was ranking these rookie wide receivers in the offseason, he was a guy that I liked as a dart throw in that range. And his draft stock kept going up throughout the draft season. It went up during the Senior Bowl. It went up during the Combine. He just kept gaining steam. And I was saying he would be a surprise mid to early of the 2nd rounds. And he got drafted in the 1st round. And when he got drafted in the 1st round, fantasy gamers hate it, especially in Dynasty. His Dynasty stock, you would expect a 1st round wide receiver to really increase. It did not. It actually kind of buoyed back down to where it was originally at. And then you were able to draft a 1st round wide receiver at a discount. It was him and Xavier Legette. You got him at wide receiver 12 plus price tag. You got him after the 5th or 6th best running backs off the board. You were able to get him at a good price, sometimes early 3rd round. And in some of the drafts I've seen, sometimes middle of the 2nd round, it was all over the place. Some people paid up a little bit more for him because they liked him. But it really tanked the stock, him going in the 1st round and the community not liking it. The thing I like about Ricky Pearsall, he fits well with the 49ers. He's an assertive route runner. He's assertive at the catch point. He's assertive off the release. He's assertive after the catch. And that's what we see with Debo and Aiyuk. Not comparisons, but just on the mentality on how they play the game. Jalen McMillan is a nasty route runner. And Ricky Pearsall is a nasty route runner. Both of them are solid at creating separation and solid at making plays downfield. You're looking at their situations. Chris Godwin's out for the year. Mike Evans is out for a long time, and we're going to get plenty of time during Mike Evans being out to evaluate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers. It's between McMillan, Palmer, and Sterling Shepard. And this is all on Baker Mayfield's shoulders because all three of these wide receivers are going to be out there. I like Trey Palmer. He gets those deep targets. He's going to be out on the field. He's going to be stretched out like Mike Evans. Not the exact same role because Bowles said things are going to be different and they're going to have to get creative with this. Sterling Shepard and McMillan are both very good in the slot but can be moved around. McMillan played a lot of his snaps in the slot at college, but with Tampa Bay, he's only playing like 22% of his snaps in the slot. So he's getting moved around and getting used in different ways. Jalen McMillan has a lot of upside in this offense. The ball flows freely in this offense compared to a lot of teams in the NFL. And if that continues to happen, he could be getting a lot of workload. Baker Mayfield favors him from what we saw in training camp and from what we saw this offense did with him the first 3 weeks of the season because he was running a lot of routes, getting a lot of snaps. When we look at the 49ers, Brandon Aiyuk's done for the year. Debo should be back sooner than later. Jennings should be out sooner than later. For the short term, if Debo's out and it's Pearsall and Jennings sharing the field, I like Pearsall a little bit more as a gamble for the week. If Debo's in, I kind of just want to wait and see things through for this week. Same thing for Jalen McMillan, unless I'm hurting and I got to make the play. Unless I'm hurting. So I'm really saying don't start him unless you have to. Unless you have to make that decision because they're both gambles right now at this juncture for fantasy football, but they're both tremendous prospects who are in tremendous situations, but just like Eminem and 8 Mile, can they capture the moment? But Ricky Pearsall is going to be on the field running a lot of routes. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Debo Samuel, that's going to be the main three. Watch out for Jacob Cowan for the back end of the season because he's also a very good wide receiver prospect. But Ricky Pearsall last week was getting the opportunity on the field and was getting the targets and getting the routes. He will be on the field, but will it be enough targets for him to be fantasy relevant when Debo's back and Jennings are on the field? That being said, we're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chris Godwin, 62 targets, gone. Mike Evans, 45 targets, gone. You're looking at over 50% of the targets erased from this team, and now it's got to go somewhere else. And that's enough to make all three of these wide receivers viable for fantasy off and on these next few weeks until Evans comes back. That's the scary thing about this. I would not be surprised if this becomes a carousel effect. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if we get Trey Palmer games, McMillan games, and Shepard's just steady Eddie or something like that. I would not be surprised if that happens. In all honesty, I could see that being the likely scenario here, where McMillan has his game, Palmer gets his game, Shepard's just steady, maybe getting 9 to 12 points per game, and you're just going to have to eat it and pull your hair out each week and gamble with your lineups. I'm not surprised if that happens because usually when wide receivers get injured, especially your main hosses, those targets don't funnel to one player. Unless you get a young guy that hits and comes out of nowhere, usually they spread around a bit. I would not be surprised if these targets just get spread around to these three wide receivers, the running backs, and Cade Otton, and it's a head scratcher. I would not be surprised. Jalen McMillan's got some upside here. He could be a league winner down the stretch. You're picking him up in this situation because you're gambling with a league winner here that could potentially cash in for you. Same thing with Trey Palmer, but Jalen McMillan has the upside to be on the field more. He already showed that earlier in the season, training camp, and he has a good rapport with Baker Mayfield. He's a gamble right now. Ricky Pearsall's a gamble right now, but he's got that first round draft capital. His first game back, he was on the field a lot. There was no easing in. He was able to run a lot of snaps. Injuries helped with that, but he got targets. He got workload. A lot of them were on short outs and quick passes. Brandon Aiyuk's gone. 46 targets erased. 22% target share. Jennings will be back. Debo will be back. Debo's going to be the mainstay, especially in the short passing game. Jennings might get some run downfield. I like Jennings better than all three. He's the safer guy, safer outlet off the waiver wire, and mainly because of what we saw earlier this season. Those are my dogs running, and that's why you're hearing that squeak noise. But also, when you look at Ricky Pearsall, though, he's quicker than fast. He's an electric route runner. He's nuanced. He creates separation. He's got good ball skills. In the right matchups, when the ball's going deep downfield, he's probably going to get some work. He's going to get those opportunities. There's going to be a matchup here and there where he's going to cash. He's got a lot of upside. I feel like he's a shade safer than McMillan when he's on the field. A shade safer, but not by much. I think both these guys are very similar in how they play the game. What I like about Pearsall's game better than McMillan's is he's very assertive, very aggressive at the catch point and breaking off routes. What I like about McMillan better than Pearsall, I know he's got a good rapport with Baker Mayfield. With that being said, from hearing what I just said there, which wide receiver you like better? Last week, they ran the same amount of routes. Jalen McMillan got 8 targets. Ricky Pearsall got 5. However, McMillan was in on 60% of the routes, where Ricky Pearsall was in on 84%. McMillan ran 24% of his snaps in the slot. Ricky Pearsall was at 47%. Jalen McMillan had a good ADOT. Ricky Pearsall's ADOT sucked. That's scary. He ran a lot of outs in that game. That impacted his average depth of target. But there's going to be matchups where he's going to have to get pushed downfield. They're going to have to explore what he does. That's just a sample of one game. And Jalen McMillan got 100 air yards. But there was a lot more volume in this game. It was a different game script. It was a game where over 70 points were scored. So in other contests where it's lower scoring, it could be different, which will be different because that's an outlier game in itself. But we're looking at the work rates here. Both of them were on the field. Both of them were getting targeted. And both of them were running routes. And when you look at the schedules, I'm not really worried about the short term too much. Honestly, with how I'm playing this, is I want to see things through this week. And I'm going to work off that. If you got to start one, I do like Pearsall against the Cowboys because it's the Cowboys. I also don't like him as much if Debo's back, but if Debo is gone and out of the lineup, then I might gamble with him. I look at him as a gamble play. Might go really bad, might go really good. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to be vastly different. I look for them to use their running backs a lot more. I look for them to use Kate Otten a lot. I look for them to move around these wide receivers. I look for all these wide receivers to get their opportunity. I really want to see what's going on with Jalen McMillan before I actually start him. Even though it's against the Falcons, then you got the Chiefs, then you got the Niners. That is not a good series of games to start your wide receiver off. Here you got Cowboys, Bucks, Seahawks. You can definitely see where the games can be higher scoring in all those. You can definitely see that. Where you got Falcons, Chiefs, Niners. That's a little bit scarier. The Niners, the Chiefs, the Falcons. I can definitely see where a reduction of scoring can be in all those games. The Falcons game, it could be higher scoring because we saw that. But again, these wide receivers are different. Mike Evans ain't out there. Chris Godwin ain't out there. They got to be creative. This is going to be totally different. And the prior games with the Bucks and Falcons, I remember going over that in the must-start video. And it was every other game was a hitter when it comes to scoring. And every other game was a downer when it came to scoring. That being said, I do like Pearsall's schedule a little bit more if that matters to you. For the short term, it's all on Debo whether or not he's back this week. Both these players, I want to wait. I want them rostered as stashes, though. I want to. But again, when I think about stashes, I'd rather have running backs. Which one do you rather have? Because I started off kind of sound better for Jalen McMillan, and then I kind of switched to Pearsall. When I look at Jalen McMillan, I think of Baker Mayfield. I think of the rapport they had over training camp. I look at those targets, the snap share, and everything like that. When I look at Pearsall, I look at the suddenness. I look at the aggressiveness. I look at how he plays on the field. I like that. I like how he does that. I feel a little bit safer with Pearsall than I do Jalen McMillan. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.